Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua 50-50 fight. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I just said in another interview, great if it is. I mean, if it is, then you've got no problem seeing it. But when AJ, I mean, decapitate's a strong word, but you know, when he renders Jake Paul unconscious like he did to Francis Ngannou, don't then say, oh well, it was Jake Paul. Do you know what I mean? I mean, when AJ beat Francis Ngannou, Ngannou just had a fight that could have gone either way with Tyson Fury. Then AJ poleaxed him, and everyone just said he's just an MMA fighter. Do you know what I mean? Jake Paul's not Francis Ngannou. But as I said before, if you want to see Jake Paul exit the boxing world,
Eddie Hearn's recent revelation on Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua is the kind of shocking revelation that makes the Kardashians seem like a slow Tuesday at the DMV. So ladies and gents, gather your popcorn, your smelling salts, and perhaps even your emergency contact. This isn't news. Rather, it's a complete breakdown of reason, ego, and delusion combined into one magnificent, disorganized whole. Eddie Hearn claims that Jake Paul is doing more than just playing with fire. He is standing in a pool of gasoline while juggling flamethrowers while wearing a blindfold. Because it seems that Jake Paul, the most popular boxing experiment on the internet, may want to smoke with Anthony. I was built in God's private gym, Joshua. Eddie Hearn is virtually shouting, Jake, turn back. This is not your battle. While waving red flags, sirens, neon warning signs, and an emergency broadcast system. However, Jake. Yes, Jake is certain that he is prepared. He's excited. He has a lot of energy. He appears to be a man who woke up believing he was an enhanced heavyweight cyborg after watching 2 Rocky movies. And Eddie Hearn essentially stated, Jake Paul has no idea the level of danger he's asking for. With the composure of a physician giving the worst diagnosis imaginable. And believe me, Eddie Hearn doesn't mean ouch when he says danger. He means that Anthony Joshua might punch Jake so hard that his YouTube password resets itself. He is implying that Jake's soul may protest about noise. He's saying that after the battle, Jake Paul might wake up and wonder, did I win? Standing in an emergency department, so fasten your seatbelt. Because Eddie Hearn's revelation is so outrageous, incendiary, and incredibly careless that it may be the greatest error Jake Paul has ever made. When word leaked out on the internet that Jake Paul was interested in Anthony Joshua, yes, the man made of titanium, prayer, and British discipline, everyone in the sports world gasped so loudly that chiropractors became popular. At first, no one took it seriously. Many assumed it was a joke, a meme, or perhaps one of those fever dreams created by AI in which SpongeBob wins the UFC. However, this originated within Jake Paul's personal circle. At that point, Eddie Hearn intervened like the lone adult with a flamethrower at a child's birthday celebration. Eddie didn't merely respond. Before the paperwork was even written, he issued a warning that was so harsh and unvarnished that it seemed as though he was attempting to save Jake Paul's life. Eddie Hearn claims that Jake Paul isn't simply ambitious or overconfident, but rather is headed straight toward a heavyweight nightmare, with the same zeal as someone offering to be a test dummy for a rocket engine. What's the most bizarre part? Jake appears pleased with it. Let's go back in time. Jake Paul began as the most popular troublemaker on the internet, evolved into a semi-serious boxer, and then declared himself a disruptor of the entire sport. To be fair, he has accomplished the seemingly impossible on several occasions. His fan following has grown to be larger than several countries. Punching retiring athletes has earned him millions of dollars. More times than a Kardashian releases a new line of cosmetics, he has remade himself. However, entering the ring with Anthony Joshua, it's not a reinvention. That concludes the documentary Ambition Gone Wrong, the Jake Paul story. The world doesn't know Anthony Joshua as well as Eddie Hearn does. He has witnessed AJ absorb blows from skilled assassins and dismiss them like mosquito stings. He has seen AJ train as if he were getting ready to battle the sun. Eddie's statement that Jake Paul would be in serious danger didn't sound exaggerated. He seemed
Conversations with myself and Nikisa, I think Jake and AJ have spoke as well. You know, from our point of view, if we're going to have a run-out fight, why not run out against Jake Paul, you know, for a lot of money? So there's ongoing conversations there. I can't tell you it's close. I can't tell you we've seen a contract, but if he genuinely wants to fight Anthony Joshua, I don't see why we wouldn't have a chance to do that fight. But, you know, our focus is on really a charge for the World Heavyweight Championship and a charge at Tyson Fury. We can't control that either. So, like I said, that's why I said to you, absolutely.
he seemed to be attempting to notify NASA, Jake's parents, and his attorney that someone was about to try something that human bones weren't made for. On the other hand, Jake Paul is certain that he belongs in the ring with giants. Perhaps he misunderstood AJ's serene demeanor for tenderness. Perhaps he drank too many protein smoothies and felt unbeatable. Or perhaps he saw AJ smile once and said, "Yeah, I got this." For whatever reason, Jake has acquired the kind of self-assurance typically found in comic book villains and those who have never been struck in the ribs by a heavyweight who intends to knock them out. Nothing was sugar-coated by Eddie Hearn, he stated unequivocally. That Jake Paul would be up against someone who has the strength of a runaway planet with bad intentions. He also implied that Paul's crew is naive enough to believe they can plan around AJ's strength, experience, speed, reach, IQ, and capacity to fold men like clean laundry. Eddie's message wasn't nuanced. "Jake, my guy, you are not in the same galaxy," was essentially what was said. Jake Paul acted as though everything was predetermined and posted cryptic hints to make the situation even more funny. Destiny. Jake Paul waking up after the fight and asking the paramedics whether the cameras are still on is the only fate involved. On the back of an energy drink sponsored by Logan Paul, Jake acts as though he is the chosen one in a mysterious boxing prophecy. However, Eddie's caution was straightforward. This is not a game. This is where the controversy intensified. There were rumors that Jake Paul had been secretly advocating for the AJ bout for some months, not days, not weeks, months. Jake has reportedly been telling people behind closed doors that AJ is beatable, predictable, and overrated. Oh, the blasphemy. Since someone likened a TikTok dancer to Floyd Mayweather. Boxing enthusiasts have never been so upset. You could almost hear Eddie's mind spinning when he heard Paul refer to AJ as beatable. This child wants to meet God. Before Jake persuaded himself that he was unbeatable, immortal, or the last boss in video game boxing, Eddie knew he had to make a public statement. Eddie then went on television to give the most crushing, courteously British warning ever. He didn't scream. He refrained from screaming. Eddie said he wasn't sure Jake Paul understood the physics of being hit by someone like AJ. But he calmly explained that Jake Paul is greatly underestimating the difference between boxing celebrities and boxing monsters. Much like a teacher explaining to a student why jumping out of a second-floor window isn't ideal. Because things move when AJ punches. The world trembles. Careers reevaluate themselves. The internet exploded at that point. Within minutes, memes went viral on all platforms. Jake Paul's visage was photoshopped into cartoon bodies flying through space, and fans began sharing these images. Action figures were used by TikTok developers to recreate the fictitious fight, with Jake fainting following a light tap. Professional fighters also weighed in, with some laughing, some pleading with Jake not to do this, and still others praying as if this were a spiritual rather than a sports issue. They were all disregarded by Jake Paul. He reiterated his desire for big challenges, big names, and big legacy moments. Which sounds motivating until you keep in mind that Anthony Joshua is a crisis rather than a moment. He's a gloved natural disaster. Before discussing it in public once more, Eddie Hearn did everything except tattoo warning labels on Jake Paul's forehead. The media went crazy when Eddie disclosed that conversations, meetings, and genuine interest had actually occurred. Jake Paul's pursuit of the largest payout of his life led others to believe that he was a genius. Eddie Hearn was somewhere in the center, massaging his forehead like a man watching his Wi-Fi bill triple for no apparent reason, while the other side believed he had fully reached his main character delusion era. What was the most bizarre thing Eddie said? The crew led by Jake Paul exuded confidence. Not optimistic, not hopeful, confident. They seem to think that a Jay's style is made for Jake. A bold assertion that experts are presently investigating. In 100 attempts, Jake Paul does not defeat Anthony Joshua was Eddie's frightening, nearly cinematic final punch to the story. 100 tries. No triumph. That is a prophecy chiseled into Mount Olympus, not a forecast. The scene was then set. Jake's desire to fight AJ wasn't the only scandal. It was the decision's complete insanity. The leak was that Jake's team genuinely thought it was a good idea, not that a fight could happen. Eddie Hearn, who has witnessed true heavyweights dominate the sport, stated unequivocally that Jake Paul ought to be quite terrified. The internet didn't simply respond when Eddie Hearn's warning appeared on the timeline. It exploded. "Jake, what are you doing?" seemed to be the collective cry of the entire digital cosmos. Because all of a sudden, Jake Paul's desire to face Anthony Joshua was discussed by every famous person. Boxer, influencer, meme king, and their perplexed cousin. And believe me, no one held back. Jake Paul became a walking joke on social media in a matter of minutes. Jake Paul trying to fight Anthony Joshua is like a chihuahua challenging a Cybertruck to a head-on collision, claimed one widely shared tweet. "Jake, if you want clout, just say that," remarked another. "There's no need to apply for the hereafter." Jake's visage was even altered on a crash test dummy. Yet the dummy's survival probability was still higher than Jake's chances versus AJ. In the meantime, TikTok created a whole movie universe out of the incident. AJ knocking Jake into other dimensions was reenacted by the creators. In one TikTok, Jake entered the ring. AJ blinked once, and Jake suddenly transformed into a Wi-Fi router. In another, Jake was hit so hard that he respawned during his time on Disney Channel. Hashtag pray for Jake. Hashtag AJ Dan single quotes to do it. And hashtag Jake Paul challenge meaning of life were among the wild hashtags. Here's where the pandemonium became even more exciting though. Real celebrities began to weigh in. A-list celebrities, combatants, performers, comedians. Everyone had a strong opinion. Jake Paul fighting AJ. Kevin Hart wrote on social media, "That's not courage. That has the potential to become a medical documentary." 50 Cent posted a photo of an ambulance with the comment, "Get this ready for the boy. Jake, nephew." "Don't do this," Snoop Dogg said as he went live. "You shouldn't fight AJ. He's the person you employ to move a couch." Even Shaq, who finds risk amusing, shook his head and replied, "Nope, no way. Not a J." The warriors, who genuinely understand what it's like to be struck by someone built like an old-fashioned gladiator, followed. After this one, Jake Paul will be eating mashed potatoes through a straw, said Dylan Danis. Conor McGregor didn't use words at all. He recently posted an emoji of a coffin. The Gypsy King himself, Tyson Fury, chuckled and declared, "Jake should fight me instead. I would at least give him an opportunity to flee." Then there was Deontay Wilder, who put it succinctly, "AJ hits like a hammer forged by God. Jake Paul won't endure for 30 seconds. The memes, the responses, and the professional opinions all painted the same picture. Jake Paul was throwing himself into the riskiest situation of his career with the assurance of a man who had never been harmed by reality. However, Jake refused to give up. "Oh no, like a man who Googled how to be fearless and didn't go past the first result. Jake doubled down. He shared instructional videos with the following captions: heavyweight mentality, greater challenges equate to greater legacy. The Wright brothers were also ridiculed. The Wright brothers didn't fist-fight airplanes. Buddy Jake behaved as though he was changing the course of history, as if he were the protagonist of an inspirational film in which the underdog stuns everyone. However, this isn't a film. This is a powerful heavyweight who punches like he's attempting to stop the Earth's rotation. However, a new generation of content was sparked by Jake's crazy exuberance. He appeared to be strolling, like Neo from The Matrix in fan modifications. Commentators started discussing whether Jake had secretly developed abilities in order to determine whether this was a destiny moment. One YouTuber even examined Jake's astrological chart. Spoiler alert, the stars responded, absolutely not. The boxing community became more and more appalled as Eddie Hearn released even more bombshells. While the internet was having a great time roasting Jake like a Thanksgiving turkey, Eddie disclosed in a podcast interview that Jake Paul's crew actually thought AJ's flaws could be exploited, taken advantage of. Jake Paul could only take advantage of a hospital bed. Eddie added that Jake's team believes AJ has slowed down. Slowed down? Even though Anthony Joshua is slowing down, his blows are still powerful enough to launch a tiny SUV into orbit. Jake is a cruiserweight at best. Hearn stated in reference to the disparity in size between the two combatants. He didn't say pillow fight danger, but rather meteor, as an extinctional level event. AJ is a heavyweight who hits like a meteor. However, the drama didn't end there. Reddit users began dissecting hypothetical combat situations as if they were a military tactic. In a 12-paragraph simulation, one user described how Jake was struck and transformed into a cloud of beige dust. Too generous was another user's response. Meanwhile, a poll asking how long does Jake survive was uploaded on the boxing subreddit. The choices were 30 seconds, 15 seconds, ding ding. That's all. After seeing AJ in person, he decides not to enter the ring. Who won the poll? Ding ding. And that's it. The biggest change, however, was when Jake Paul went live and declared, "People think AJ scares me. He doesn't. I constantly work out with heavy weights." For 3 seconds, the conversation was silent, then erupted with messages such as, "Which heavy weights? On which planet? Sparring Logan doesn't count. Bro, training with heavyweights who aren't AJ is like swimming in a bathtub and then going into the Pacific Ocean." Logan Paul even made an effort to subtly suggest that perhaps Jake was insane. Look, Jake likes big challenges. But AJ is literally built different, Logan said to fans. This translates to, "I love my brother, and I don't want him turned into confetti." However, Jake continued to gain confidence as a result of the pandemonium. He shared another video of himself striking mitts. One more weightlifting video, another reel, gazing at himself in the mirror as if he were Apollo Creed's second incarnation. People weren't persuaded. Every time Jake uploads a training clip, AJ gains more power like a video game boss, a user commented. Jake Paul hitting pads isn't scary, another person remarked. It sounds like a garage door closing on your soul as a J hits pads. The analogies to popular culture followed Twitter. People likened Jake's courage to a young child taking on King Kong, a shark being slapped by a goldfish shay, Roomba lunging at a bulldozer mosquito, advising a tornado to relax the finest one though. A fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua would be as intense as a McDonald's ketchup packet and a hydraulic press. That immediately went viral. Public indignation and public humor have already blended together. Some fans declared they would pay anything to witness the catastrophe. while others insisted that the fight not take place because they thought it was inhumane. Some even created GoFundMe sites with the titles "Buy Jake a Helmet" before he meets AJ and "Protect Jake Paul." Eddie Hearn was unable to avoid the insanity. Every interview he conducted revolved around Jake Paul. Does Jake have a night chance? Reporters asked again. Every time, Eddie gave the same response: no, with a gentle sigh, a courteous smile, and a verbal smack. Not at all. Nevertheless, Jake Paul persisted, continued to speak, continued to advertise, rather than using a stretcher. He continued to act as though he was being called to destiny. The storm only became stronger. The memes become more bizarre. The responses became more audible. The public's perception became more acute, and the boxing community let out a louder cry each time Jake showed confidence. Eddie Hearn is attempting to save Jake Paul before it's too late, and he should fear Anthony Joshua. By the time Eddie Hearn's cautions, the internet's meltdown and Jake Paul's relentless confidence tour had subsided. Everyone in the boxing world felt as though they were living in the season finale of a reality show that no one asked for, but couldn't stop watching. The true question at hand was what would happen if Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua actually faced off. What repercussions, backlash, and shockwaves would affect social media, the sport, and the Paul enterprise as a whole? Because, let's be quite clear, this isn't just another altercation. This isn't Jake taking on a YouTuber who picked up footwork from Fortnite or a former mixed martial arts fighter. Anthony Joshua is the living apocalypse in human form, a two-time heavyweight champion and an Olympic gold medalist. Everything shifts once the fantasy comes true. News of survival spreads. Losing starts to become the norm. And since gravity, being destroyed becomes the most likely result. And that's where the fallout starts. Let's start by discussing Jake's professional standing. Jake Paul is a disruptor at the moment, a rebel. The man who pushed his way into the public debate after emerging from the YouTube cosmos. People like his tenacity, his commercial acumen, and his ability to create headlines out of thin air, even though they don't always respect his boxing. However, that reputation completely changes the moment he enters the ring with a J. It turns into a countdown until impact. Jake is now the underdog lamb, entering a lion's interview rather than the antagonist. And Jake Paul's whole superstar boxer narrative breaks like cheap glassware. Or more accurately, when AJ destroys him. Fans of boxing would exclaim, "See?" Casual admirers might remark, "Wait, he really tried this. I told you so." Jake would also have to face a reality that he might not be emotionally ready to accept. There are levels in this sport that cannot be overcome by any amount of hype, influence, or illusion. However, the repercussions are more profound because the public's opinion of Jake Paul is permanently altered following a fight like that. Jake is currently perceived as untamed, disorderly, and fearless. However, following a J, people may begin to question whether he crossed the boundary between self-destructive optimism and bravery. Although his supporters may come together to support him, the internet, which helped shape him, will also devour him. Every meme, joke, and slow-motion video of Anthony Joshua punching Jake Paul into the astral plane becomes an enduring part of online culture, eternal, unavoidable. That is disliked by brand deals. Concussions are disliked by sponsors. Investors avoid placing bets on individuals who appear overly fragile. The impact on Jake Paul's economic empire is the following. Consequence: the Paul brothers manage their professional lives like businesses. Every altercation, announcement, and public dispute is a part of a plan to increase power, sell goods, and control all media. However, The Jake Paul industry suffers a devastating blow that could alter Jake's course for years if he is crushed by AJ. In front of millions of people. Maximum hydration. Maverick merchandise. Pay-per-view agreements. Public collaborations. Businesses enjoy winners. Businesses value dependability. Businesses prefer influencers with functional facial bones. The way a loss occurs is what counts, not the loss itself. It's common to get beaten, being destroyed by a heavyweight titan while everyone else laughs. Money cannot instantly repair that kind of brand damage. However, there is an additional layer that is much more bizarre. Anthony Joshua's reaction? Eddie Hearn is pacing around interviews like a worried father because, let's face it, this fight isn't risk-free for AJ either. Fighting Jake Paul is an Excalibur-sized double-edged sword for AJ. Everyone sighs and says, well, obviously, if he prevails. If anything less than complete devastation occurs, such as Jake landing one clean punch, surviving for more than 60 seconds, or appearing even slightly competent, AJ also becomes a meme. Consider the headlines. The boxing world is shaken when Jake Paul survives 2 minutes against AJ. AJ takes longer than anticipated. Jake Paul win. Is a J slipping? Jake Paul didn't die. That's ridiculous, but that's how social media operates. Here, logic is not welcome. Facts are disregarded. Jake Paul did better than expected is a ridiculous story that might eclipse a J's entire career. Legacy and future. There's also the risk of scheduling. AJ is getting ready for big, meaningful heavyweight bouts. Fighting Jake Paul so becomes disruptive. A diversion. A high-risk, low-reward circus act that may ruin negotiations, timing, and momentum. Eddie Hearn is aware of this. He is treating the entire issue as a biological hazard because of this. However, let's focus on the social fallout, the chaotic environment, because social media won't be prepared when AJ strikes Jake with a clean right hand. Memes are going to explode like pyrotechnics. Upload records will be broken by reaction channels. Twitter is going to crash. TikTok is about to freeze. Additionally, Jake Paul's whole fan base will begin to post heartfelt tributes as if he had just used a plastic fork to battle. Thanos, we warned him, will be said by sports commentators. This wasn't fair. Boxing experts will remark, content time is what YouTubers will say, why did he do this? Will be yelled by casual admirers. Billboards will be rented by those who despise Jake. There will be prayer circles led by Jake's supporters and Jake Paul himself. When he awakens, he will wonder what day it is, where he is, hey, and why his teeth feel like a jumbled puzzle. However, the story resets after the dust settles, which is even stranger. Yes, the world will view Jake differently, but it will also wait for the next controversy, altercation, or eruption. Because controversy is the foundation of Jake Paul, whether you like him or not. And his next reinvention might be fueled by this degree of devastation. Perhaps he turns into a villain. He might decide to retire. He might produce a documentary about the punch heard around the world. Or perhaps, and this is the crazy part, he returns even more insane, stronger, and crazy. Because Jake Paul never goes away. He changes. What about Anthony Joshua? He leaves with another payout, another knockout, and another reminder that everything else is meaningless when a heavyweight punches. Ultimately, Eddie Hearn's caution was more than just a warning. It was a prophecy. A prophecy of peril, illusion, conceit, ambition, and the kind of chaos that only Jake Paul can bring about. And one question now hovers over the entire world. Will Jake Paul truly engage in combat with Anthony Joshua? Or will his sanity intervene at the last minute? In any case, the consequences have already started. The scandal is only becoming more widespread. And just like that, ladies and gents, This heavyweight fever dream, this enchanted voyage through illusion, peril, fate, and an abundance of chaos akin to that of Jake Paul has come to a conclusion. Congratulations! You're constructed differently if you've gotten it this far without fainting. Dialing 911 for Jake ahead of time, or texting your group chat, bro, he's really not built for AJ. Let me pose the actual question though, before you dash off to revisit Anthony Joshua's highlights and hope Jake Paul never sees them. What are your thoughts? Is Jake Paul the most courageous person on the planet? Is he the world's most delusional man? Is he merely attempting to expedite his own documentary, How I Accidentally Met Jesus in Round 1? Don't be afraid to share your craziest opinions in the comments. Go ahead and let your inner anarchy run wild, since this channel will always be messy. Smash that button like if it owes you money while you're down there. As if you're attempting to wake Jake after a J hits him. Or as if Eddie Hearn is smashing the panic alarm each time Jake speaks. When you hit it so hard, YouTube assumes you're reporting an emergency, then sign up scandals, don't sleep around here drama, never. Stops, and we stop going insane more quickly. Then Jake Paul offers to fight in conflicts he can't. When turn on the small bell icon for notifications as well. Yes, handle it the same way AJ handles punching bags. In order to avoid missing the next expose, meltdown, leak, or internet-breaking catastrophe. Give it your all, and keep in mind that there is only one site that can provide the truth with this much fire. Comedy and mayhem in the world of conflict, power, controversy, and dubious choices. This is the boxing of legends. The stories are more powerful than the fighters. I'll see you at the next explosion.